Black history. What do you know about Black history? Well, most African Americans know that they are the descendants of slaves, that their forefathers were scattered around the world, and that they are the descendants of an oppressed people. However, most African Americans don't know their history beyond slavery. This gap in history is due to the many barriers that stand between African Americans and the truth. This documentary will remove those barriers and reconnect so-called African Americans with their true history. An interesting fact about African Americans today is that African American males belong to one family group, one bloodline, often called E1B1A or E3A. This means that African American males belong to one family group. Roughly 85% of African American males with African ancestry on their father's side are E1B1A. An interesting fact emerges when we take a look at the different DNA groups in Africa today. Now, Africa is composed of different types of DNA group, each shown using different colors on this map. Now, E1B1A or E3A is shown on the map in green. We were told that slavery was random. Now, to put that to the test, let's use a jar of jelly beans, for example. Let's say each different colored jelly bean in this jar represents a different DNA group in Africa. Now, a random act of slavery could be represented by simply sticking one's hand in this jar and grabbing a handful of jelly beans. We would expect to have an assortment of jelly beans similar to the one shown on the screen now. However, we find a different pattern emerge, an unexpected pattern. We find that one DNA group, one jelly bean, was associated with the transatlantic slave trade. And you guessed it, it's E1B1A. Let's review the genetic makeup of so-called African American males today. Here's the rundown. Roughly 60% of African American males identify as E1B1A. Now, that's an estimate. Some may say that number's too high, but actually, in fact, that number's too low. And here's why. If you take a look at the next two data sets on the screen, R1b and I, these two groups are European DNA groups. Now, due to the high amount of rape that occurred during slavery between slave owners and their slaves, we see an infusion of European DNA into the African American genome. This causes the E1B1A DNA averages to appear lower than they actually are. DNA studies around the world confirm these results. And in fact, excerpts from 3 of those studies are shown on the screen. The excerpt located at the top of the screen tells us that African Americans, along with West Africans, are closely related, that we share a common ancestor that walked the earth during the time of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The second excerpt tells us that African Americans are roughly 78.1% West African and 18.5% European. Now, it goes on to say that this intermixture is due to the intercourse between West African females and European males. What does it all mean? Well, it means that African Americans are closely related. It means that if you took a DNA test with, for example, Ancestry.com, you would get a map back similar to the one shown on the top right. Now notice the results of the ancestry DNA matches E1B1A locations. The map at the bottom shows the concentrations of E1B1A groups in Africa. The high concentrations are near the Slave Coast, Senegambia, and South Africa. E1B1A groups in Africa today are composed of many different tribes. Thankfully, due to DNA research, we now know the names of those tribes. For example, the Bantu, Benin, the Cameroon, the Cross River, Nigeria, Ghana, the Igbo tribe, the Hutu tribe, the Sanghalese, the Tutsi, the Wolof, the Yoruba, the Hausa, and the Zulu. Language studies also confirms this close-knit family of people. For example, Alfred Ellis writes, the Tishi-speaking peoples of the Gold Coast, the Ga-speaking peoples of the Gold Coast, the Ewe-speaking peoples of the Slave Coast, the Yoruba-speaking peoples of the Slave Coast, whose languages all belong to one family and who have apparently all sprung from one common stock. An interesting fact regarding the language of the Slave Coast is that Europeans sometimes referred to the Slave Coast as Ewe or Evuwe. Now, according to African author Mawuli, Evuwe is the Hebrew word for Hebrews, sometimes spelled I-V-R-I. Now, as you can see on the map, Evuwe, you also see Evuweo, which is the plural form, which means Hebrews.